Well, I wanted to talk about defining moments. Like, what were some of the things you went through, some of those breakthrough moments, or even perhaps a setback that shaped the way you guys lead today?
It's great. We were actually talking about this earlier, and I think what really the pivotal moment I think in our business and Dobbins Group where we took a big shift, like many, was during COVID. Um, we were already a virtual organization, so it didn't affect us in the way that like, oh, we're not going to the office to do this, and to have face to face meetings. But it did impact our clientele. So we had a big client that did like big, large events around the world that that they kind of shut down. So it was shifting to everything suddenly went very still. But then all of a sudden, those CEOs that we were the kind of our targets, they were home, away from their office, away from their day to days. So like, I need to think about marketing. I've had this on my like checklist of things to do for a decade and haven't ever really devoted time. And we started getting clients, and it was referrals based. And I was like, oh, I'm while I'm sitting here, our first one that I really remember was a construction company. They do tenant improvement, and suddenly a female CEO, and suddenly she had all of her work was stopped, but she didn't want to stop, and there's no stopping her. So she's like, I would not able to capitalize when we do come back, have capitalize on that, and how can we share our story. And that became a defining moment. And we had four or five of those during the shutdown. They kind of came into our lives that are still in our lives. And they've all led to like, much bigger, broader things.
And I think their choice to lean in to marketing during challenging times, I think says a lot too about those organizations, because sometimes it's easy to react. I'm like, oh, when things get tight or there's a downturn, it's like, okay, pull marketing, like cut back. But really leaning into, okay, well, how can I tell a story? How can I think about doing business differently? I think as when we came in, and there were also really innovative initiatives coming out of this. So in the construction space, it was return to work. How do we think about like repurposing offices? What does that look like? What does the future of work look like? And so from a strategic standpoint, we really able to kind of help shape the strategy of where the business was going, but also rethinking about how are we telling these stories. And that just started happening in various industries in Poland as we were coming out of COVID. And those things like that have really shaped the trajectory of the Dobbins Group. Like we necessarily weren't like, oh, we're going to be like the go-to construction agency, but we ended up carving out a space. And what we found that we loved is, as we're going into kind of some of these industries like construction, where they're like, okay, it could be maybe not as like glamorous, or like what stories are there to tell? There's so many stories. And then our client up in San Francisco, for instance, like, fourth generation construction company out of Santa Clara, but built most of Silicon Valley. And we've been like kind of capturing all of their builds over the past 4 years. And when we went up there, it was like, oh, you're building the Stanford Hospital, you're building the bridge, you're building the fabric and the structure of our society. Just think about all the lives that are saved in that hospital that you're building. And so we kind of leaned in and really got to tell those stories visually. And so that became an opportunity for us to think differently about like, oh, what about these kind of unrepresented markets where maybe storytelling isn't top of mind? And I think also from a strategic standpoint, we were able then to see like, okay, you've been able to kind of grow your business organically in this region for 65 years, but as you're looking at expansion, people don't know you in different regions. So we kind of use that as kind of a way to help them develop their go-to market strategy. And I think, they're almost about to hit $1 billion. So
Wow.
really helping them think. And I think also a generational shift too, because I think like with the previous generation of leadership didn't really think about marketing as like, oh, maybe we really don't need this, but they've also really leaned into it as a way to develop talent, retain talent, position themselves at a place that people want to be a part of. So not necessarily like, oh, we're trying to acquire new clients, but we're also looking at it as like, how are we telling our brand story to attract the best talent that we can.
Yeah.
And I
Love
think
that.
moving through that, we kind of learned as we went and kind of carved out those spaces.
It's amazing that you guys have clients from the very startup that's just getting off the ground all the way to billion-dollar plus companies nowadays. The range that gives you, and at the same time working with CEOs of companies of all those different sizes. And yeah, one of the things that stood out to me immediately when we started working together back in 2021 was when you presented a script of what the story we needed to tell was and what our homepage of the website would say. I was like, they have a gift for putting in the words exactly what we want to convey. And I've had people say, I'm at this networking breakfast because I got an email. And I can't believe I actually booked a ticket from an email. Like, I never even pay attention to things that are hitting my inbox that I don't know who it's coming from. But there was something about the way the email was worded that stood out to me, and I'm here and I'm so happy that I came. So, and I can relate to your story about COVID because, of course, we started working during COVID, and my whole life was appended by COVID with my events company being on standstill, so I can absolutely relate.